That's just something that I thought about when you were talking about men need to be more feminine. I was thinking, like, what do you think is, like, a good level? Because they do associate more masculine traits with success, like conscientiousness and extroversion and stuff. So what do you think is, like, the healthy balance of feminine traits? What? Are you going to draw your cowboy hats?
I'm going to draw a graph, okay? This is how I would view it, all right? I think that the figure on the left and the figure on the right represent the idealized version of a man and a woman, okay? I think that the ideal best type of man is somebody that is extremely masculine, but it also has an extreme amount of femininity that expresses itself in pro-social behaviors. So a man that is incredibly masculine will be a strong leader, but he'll also be highly empathetic to the people beneath him. He'll be somebody that can take charge in situations, but he'll also understand the people around him enough to be able to give orders. Essentially, he'll be able to be a leader, but he'll understand the thoughts and the feelings of people beneath him so that he can be a good leader to those people because he understands their needs, essentially. He's like a leader, as I would say, not just a boss, right? This is how the incorporation of these two traits is what I view as like the ideal man. For a man that is very high in masculinity, but is emotionally retarded, this guy goes to jail because he's probably selling drugs, robbing people, being retarded, okay? For what I would consider to be like an ideal woman is somebody that is very, very high in these feminine traits, very emotional, intelligent, nurturing, all that bullshit, whatever. However, really strong women also have a very good deal of masculine traits as well. They reign in the family, they control the household, they represent their family's affairs to other people. They're very good at like building like social status or whatever while the man is working. Like they do that management very, very well in a very powerful way. A woman that is just super agreeable all the time here and gets walked over by everybody and has no boundaries, no ability. These are single moms, right? Roughly speaking, this is like how I would view people.
And then these are like criminals.
Sure. Well,
No.
Yeah, these are like these guys go to jail because they're retarded, and these women get rolled over by everybody because they have no boundaries and they can't assert themselves ever. I feel like any reasonably successful person is going to have a very good balance of both feminine and masculine traits. I don't think you can just push infinite masculinity and be successful, because if you do that, you'll look like Myron looked like on stream 2 nights ago when he was running around like not like an ape, like in a racist sense, but literally with the ape hair on and like making ape noises because
But do you think the first one will always be better than the fourth one, or no? Do you think
Better?
they're equal in terms of like success or like the perfect balance?
Well, success is relative. What do we mean? Because like, for instance, like some women wouldn't consider it successful to have a successful career. Some men wouldn't consider it successful to just be like a really good father and caretaker, right? Like success is somewhat relative.
Yeah.
In terms of how society judges you, it depends. I mean, even at that, it depends on what segment of society you're in, right?
And this doesn't correlate to gender, right? Like the fourth one could be a guy, right? Or no? Can they not because if they're on like?
I mean, I guess theoretically it could be, yeah.
Okay.
But I think in terms of like traditional strengths that play towards our like relatively set like biological strengths, I think that I think that like the first and fourth are ideal. Like these are the types of women that I look for. Like I like people that are relatively feminine and everything, but they also have to be like very confident, very assertive, ability to assert boundaries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like I think this is a really good match. You don't want like, whereas like people that are passport bros, they're looking for these types of women. They want women that are like feminine, but also demure, submissive, easy to walk over, aren't going to challenge or assert boundaries very often. Like that's who they're looking for. Like this group of people are people that are looking to be taken advantage of, essentially, in my opinion.
Makes sense. Do you think people just like fall into one of those categories or the other? Or do you think like women, like do you think a woman, like that single mom, like there are things she could do to raise the blue besides just like taking testosterone? Yeah,
I mean, there are things that you work on, right? Like men can go to therapy and develop their emotional intelligence. Also, somebody points out in chat, this is true, I really don't like labeling this masculine and feminine traits. I think it's stupid. I don't think that these, like, there are traits that like men tend to exhibit more and women tend to exhibit more, but I think that labeling them masculine and feminine is actually really toxic.
Wait, what, the blue and pink? Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah, but like, because there's the problem I have with this is that there's a collection of traits that people will call masculine or feminine that I think shouldn't be gendered at all. Like for instance, like having honor and dignity and being a leader, like men and women can equally achieve this in different respects, right? Like a woman is a leader of a household, like technically, even in a conservative household, like women exhibit leadership skills. women are also far more likely to be active in local politics than men are. They're the ones that lead like the canvassing groups. They're the ones that lead like a lot of the charitable work. Like they manage all of that. That's why a lot of wives of like wealthy billionaires like manage their philanthropy and like shit like that.
Yeah.
And then same thing here, like women that are, you know, strong women or whatever, like, or no, that was the strength part. For feminine traits, things like nurturing and emotional intelligence and empathy and all of that, these can be exhibited by men as well as women. Like this, they shouldn't just be a feminine trait. Like every good male role model that's ever existed in history has also exhibited a very high amount of like empathy and emotional intelligence too.
But I don't think when people say like a feminine trait, they mean only women can exhibit it.
No, when they say feminine trait, they usually mean like weak and stupid and loser.
Okay.
Almost always. Unironically, because usually for men, the insult is to like call them like women and say you're being feminine. Like notice how on Fresh and Fit or on any of these shows, anytime you get emotional, they go like, oh, that's a feminine trait. Like it's just such a weird, I feel like feminine traits, and they really are. If you look at the balance of them, like masculine versus feminine traits, masculine traits are always cooler than feminine traits. Masculine traits are like conquer the world, you know, lead armies, lead country, and feminine traits are like takes care of your kids really well, breastfeeds.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of arguing with Sneeko about on his stream, was like he talks about the Matrix and this idea of like transcending the rat race and just like rising above and like finding glory. And I'll be like, okay, what do you think the ideal life is for a woman? And he'll be like on a farm raising like 10 kids. And I was like, see, to me that feels like the most like Matrixy version of the Matrix ever. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
the real red pill is realizing that the red pill is just another matrix that you can participate in, I think. Because like everybody will say, and this is kind of like, it's funny because in ways, if you go down that road far enough, you basically rediscover liberalism. The idea that like, it's cool to have different paths in life and we ought to be able to explore those and discover those on our own while still kind of like intersecting and working with each other in society. But people will say some shit like, oh, like you're stuck in the matrix, like come join mine. And it's like, oh cool, I've broken out of the matrix, like now what do we do over here? Well, men have this hardcore narrow set of rules prescribed to them, and don't ever raise your voice because that means you're emotional and you're a loser. And for a woman, if you've got more than 2 bodies, you might as well fucking kill yourself. Like, oh cool, well I'm glad I got into this world, this is way better than the matrix, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about femininity, like women being leaders of the household and then like obviously doing the campaigning stuff for like local politics. I guess, yeah, my main contention with it is that like it feels like the more masculine you get, like the more masculine traits like as a woman you achieve, it feels like you're closer to getting like glory and honor. But then it feels like the more feminine you get, like for me it just doesn't feel like there's much honor or like glory or like fulfillment in that. But that's also because like I don't identify with like motherhood, maybe it's an age thing and stuff like that. So that's why it's when I hear people say like men should be more feminine, obviously they should be more like I said, not be criminals, but like I said, that's already kind of perimetered off by laws and stuff like that. So I was wondering like, yeah, what that would look like. But I don't know. I think we have like this really weird thing in society where we're doing this recentism. Matrix people will say things like, we need to get away from this recent weird thing about women, and we need to get back to like what it means to be like a man and a woman and how men go after honor. But if you look historically, I don't even think that's true. Like my history and all that education is horrible. But even like in The Merchant of Venice, you ever read that Shakespeare play? Like, one of the wives, Portia, literally goes through this whole thing to like fake being like a guy in order to like trick some people and like win a court case and shit against some fucking crazy Jewish dude. And like that was like a woman arguably like determining the outcome of her husband, really, because I think she was even in charge of like Antonio's destiny and everything, right? I mean, you've got like in the Catholic Church, there were female martyrs, like women that sacrificed their entire families into like boiling cauldrons or whatever. You had like Joan of Arc and shit. Like women sought honor and shit and were able to find it too. Like, and I'm sure there's a ton of literary examples where like women are doing that. It tends to be the man, but this idea that like historically women are just like relegated to household roles, I think that's ahistorical. I don't even think that's necessarily true. Yeah. But people like to pretend that it always be like, oh boy.